Welcome everyone. Yes, today is the day 9.1 has hit the PTR. So, there is a lot of stuff that is coming out very quickly regarding tons of different things, from new mounts to new armor models, weapon models, the new loot from the raid and the dungeons, the bosses from the raid and the dungeon that are going to come out in 9.1. There is the new zone, Cortia, and all of that, but in this video, we are going to go over something much more important, the thing that people care the most, and that is power. That is balance for your spec, balance for your class, the additions that Blizzard is planning for 9.1. Now, there is way too much stuff to put out in a single video, so let's just point out that right now, the first changes that have come through for the 9.1 PTR are going to be related to your legendaries, related to your covenant abilities. There are going to be extra rows of soulbinds, 3 more picks that you can go for your soulbind, 3, as well, of course, to the changes to the balance, to talents, to spells, to abilities that have hit multiple classes and specs, which is what we're going for today. Today we are looking at the balance tuning for the spells and abilities that Blizzard is pushing through at the very start of 9.1. I'm sure as the weeks go by, we're going to have to retract and redact several of these changes that Blizzard will continue to fine-tune, not to mention there is still quite a few specs missing, quite a few classes missing from this. So let's go for the initial change, which is, in very short, nerfing the strongest specs. That's literally all it is. I can give you a TLDR. The better performing specs in 9.0, at least PvE related, were arguably Fire Mage and Balanced Druid, followed probably by Shadow Priest and Affliction Warlock, and they all got nerfed. So let's go over and see what happened. Starting from Warlock. So Warlock starts out, and it's not that bad, They get some quality of life changes to their legendaries. Sacro Lashes, Dark Strike, and Wrath of Consumption. These are 2 AoE, dungeon-focused legendaries, and Affliction has some trouble keeping up and ramping up quick enough their damage in Mythic Plus. And these legendaries have been tuned seemingly to that end. So Sacro Lashes Dark Strike is going to have its corruption damage increased from 15 to 25%, so that's good. That's a dot. It's the fastest dot you can land on multiple targets with Seed of Corruption, so it's very good to have it buffed by almost 50%. But also, another cool addition is that each time it deals damage, your corruption, any of the curses you have active on the target are extended by 2 seconds. This pretty much makes your curses permanently lasting on every target affected by corruption, which is of course rather useless and pointless in raid encounters, but in Mythic Plus, where there are multiple targets that can be slowed, that can have their cast time slowed by your curse, this is going to be very valuable. Of course, in the end, the strongest part is whether or not the damage increase of corruption is going to be worth taking. You're not really going to use an entire legendary in Mythic Plus just because it gives you some extra utility for your curses. The other legendary being changed and adding more quality of life for Mythic Plus is Wrath of Consumption, basically doubled the effectiveness. The previous Wrath of Consumption would give you 1 stack if the target was dying with Agony or Corruption on him. Now it's going to give you 1 stack per each application of Corruption and Agony on a target that is dying, which means if your target had both Corruption and Agony on him as he was dying, you will gain 2 stacks. This makes it easier for you to ramp up your dot damage between packs, especially if you happen to, make this buff expire between pulls, especially after a boss, for example. This is going to make it much easier. Particularly annoying, of course, when you are pulling a pack that only has 2 mobs or 3 mobs. Previously, you could only get to 1, 2, or 3 stacks. Now you get double. So the start was good, okay? The start was good. 2 quality of life changes to your legendaries, but then the nerfs come in. So Blizzard tried to nerf, to pretty much actually put out this exact nerf a few months ago, I think a couple of months ago. But then the Affliction Warlock players revolted. They started screeching about this nerf being too big, about why don't you just nerf the fucking OP specs, pointing at Fire Mage and Balanced Druid, not realizing that Affliction is not that weak in comparison. So Blizzard stepped back, did not push this nerf to live. Looks like they changed their mind in 9.1, at least in the PTR. Who knows, maybe they will do the exact same thing and revert this nerf as well. So Malefic Rapture is getting its damage nerfed. The Malefic Rapture is a nerf that equals more or less 18% damage nerf through the ability, and the counter to that is that Agony is being buffed by about 20%. Now, the difference is that Malefic Rapture does 4 times the damage of Agony. So there is a power imbalance between the strength of the two abilities. So obviously, you're gonna get hurt much more for the Malefic Rapture nerf compared to the Agony buff. From a playability standpoint, this is good because Agony is the more annoying of your dots to lay out. It's good that your Corruption does more damage and can do more damage because it's much easier to lay out. You also have the option, the talent option, to make it last infinitely on PvE enemies. So it's good to lower the importance of your Agony, especially in Mythic Plus, especially when fighting multiple targets. However, this is coming at the cost of a pretty hefty nerf for your main hitter, your main damage dealer, Malefic Rapture. And this does not end here for Affliction, because they also get Focused Malignancy nerfed by over 50%. This is very important because Focused Malignancy is the conduit which gives you extra damage to your Malefic Rapture. So, heavy hit for now on your Malefic Rapture damage. So, it looks like the current plan in 9.1 from Blizzard is to hit the effectiveness of Malefic Rapture for Affliction. Not much has happened for the other specs in the Warlock class. Only one change, one buff to Destruction Warlock and their Chaos Bolt, because Chaos Bolt has been buffed by basically 10%. Again, this is like the second or third back-to-back buff that Chaos Bolt has been given to Destruction. I mentioned it before, I will mention it again. It's pretty dangerous to buff Chaos Bolt. Destruction Warlocks can do some pretty ugly things when they become meta, especially, if Blizzard plans to nerf Affliction this way. Now on to another one of the nerfed specs, we have Balance Druid. So Blizzard continues in their quest to nerf Balance of All Things. The nerf is going to put Balance of All Things from giving you 40% critical chance, decreasing by 8% every second, to having 24% critical strike chance, decreasing by 3% every 1 second. This means that after 4 seconds, the old Legendary was giving you only 8% crit, whereas the new one still gives you 12%, but this is nothing. Yeah, this is pointless. The real strong part of the Legendary was the 40% and the 32% crit you were getting in the first couple of GCDs of Eclipse, which is what obviously Blizzard is hitting. So it is a pretty nasty nerf. Unfortunately, for Balance, it doesn't end there. So Blizzard tries to nudge a little bit Balance towards New Moon, the Untaken talent, which is now getting buffed. Now the recharge rate of the cycling moons goes from 25 to 20 seconds, so this might become the new pick. Why? Because Solstice is getting nerfed. Solstice is getting nerfed from 300% more often proccing of Shooting Stars to 200% proccing more often. So that's already pretty bad. That was another source of free damage for Balance Druid, which was overtaking all the other talents in the row. Remember, Blizzard always used to claim that they want active talents, they want active abilities that you can choose in your talent tree, in your talent rows, and to be more effective than plain passives. Because, of course, the ability you have to use requires some skill, some planning, some rotation, whereas the passive is just automatic. And Solstice still is a pretty good example of that. It's a passive ability which easily outdamages the rest, so now Blizzard is trying to nerf it and buffing one of the active abilities in that row. Then there is another change to Stellar Drift. Stellar Drift currently uses to increase the Starfall duration by 2 seconds and the damage by 15%. Now, Starfall damage is increased by 25%, so looks good. However, you lose the 2-second duration, the extra duration, so effectively the damage increase is lost because you have 2 less seconds of Starfall ticking, but also as a 15-second cooldown. So your Starfall without the 2-second longer duration lasts for 8 seconds, and now it also has a 15-second cooldown. So it is a pretty big nerf when it comes to AoE. When it comes to Mythic Plus, really, most of the time, the raid encounter strength of Balance Druid was burst anyways, so this is not as important. But all those together are some pretty severe nerfs to Balance Druid so far. Now we have to mention another spec getting nerfed, which is Fire Mage. So Fire Mage is getting their AoE nerfed. Both Flame Strike and Flame Patch are getting nerfed. Both of them are getting a flat 10% nerf. Funny because Flame Strike right before the release was buffed by 10%, and now like 6 months later, 7 months later, Blizzard was like, whoops, that was wrong, and they reset this change. Flame Patch is pretty important because, as you see here, Flame Patch is a pretty big part of your Flame Strike damage. It's a pretty significant part, so this double 10% nerf is basically almost a 20% nerf to your main source of AoE damage. And these two are actually the lightest nerfs Fire Mage is receiving, because Fire Mage is getting nerfed in its Kindling, the talent that Fire Mage has been using the entire expansion, which I mentioned in my Fire Mage video and why they were so strong. They were so strong because now that they are not tied to Mechagon Bracers and Memory of Lucid Dreams, that they have to save their combustion to be a 2-minute cooldown, so they never used Kindling. Now they have, and Kindling has given them 45-second cooldown reduction on their combustion. This change is effectively giving you a 30-second cooldown reduction to your combustion. You are losing 15-ish seconds of cooldown reduction. It's going to take longer for you to cycle through your combustion burst windows, which is very bad, because of course Fire Mage is all about that burst window. Talking about the burst window, it gets worse because they also get nerfed in Infernal Cascade. The other point mentioned in my Fire Mage video as why they were so strong, and I am sorry for jinxing it, because I pointed out it is always risky to be a very powerful spec because of a single thing, especially if it's a borrowed power, if it's not something in your kit, because what happens when Blizzard nerfs that thing? Fire Mage is just like that. Just like Balanced Druid with Convoke the Spirits, just like Marksmanship Hunter with Wild Spirits, Fire Mage had a lot of their power in Infernal Cascade, and Infernal Cascade is getting nerfed by 20%, even more if you add the scaling. So the base damage of Infernal Cascade goes from 9% to 7%. The current version, which is the 226 item level, goes from giving you 14.4% more damage to 11.2. Now this stacks up twice. So effectively it goes from 28.8% more damage inside combustion to 22.4. So you're basically losing 30% extra burst damage because of this nerf to Infernal Cascade. And the burst is going to happen less often because Kindling has been nerfed, and the burst in AoE is going to do even less damage because Flame Strike and Flame Patch both were nerfed. So this is the current plan that Blizzard has in mind coming into 9.1. Even if they will, revert, change, or lessen some of these nerfs, the plan, the idea is very clear. The idea is to tune Fire Mage down. So at least we have this input going forward. After these specs, we have some lighter changes spread around. Havoc, Demon Hunter, I don't know there was any need to, but it's getting nerfed to Relentless Onslaught. This is particularly hurtful because this is a scaling talent for Havoc Demon Hunter, particularly for single target. However, it's not that major, it's not that brutal. You do lose 2.5% at the max rank, so okay, it's passable, it's not that bad of a nerf. What is a bad nerf is the nerfs given to Discipline and Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest is getting its #1 always used strongest Conduit nerfed. Dissonant Echoes is getting its Void Bolt damage nerfed. Now, this is not as tragic as it looks like. This entire Conduit doesn't even give you, 6% of your damage. Void Bolt is not even close to being your most damaging ability, so it's not, it's not that hurtful to lose this, but it is still a nerf, nonetheless. What it is certainly more hurtful to have is yet another nerf to Spirit Shell. I fucking told you, Blizzard, why did you even put Spirit Shell back into the game? You've just been nerfing it for months, and this is another nerf. After nerfing the total absorb from 100 to 80%, now they also nerf the cooldown from 60 seconds to 90 seconds, so a 50% cooldown nerf to Spirit Shell. It is of course very big, because with a 1-minute cooldown you were almost certain to be able to hit every single major window of damage from bosses, because many bosses have a 45-second or a 1-minute damage window, so you were forced to cycle your cooldowns. Like the first time we use Spirit Link, and then we use Barrier, and then we use Aura Mastery with Tranquility, and in every one of these we also pop down a Spirit Shell. With 90-second cooldown, it is actually very often, it's actually pretty bad, because not only you won't be able to use it every time, but you will also have to hold the cooldown for when the ability comes, especially, for example, if the ability comes every 2 minutes or every minute, and your cooldown is 90 seconds, it's very annoying, right? It's very frustrating. But it's a pretty bad change to Spirit Shell. But we finish this list on a very positive note because there is a heavy, major buff to Holy Priest. So one of the biggest problems of Holy Priest is that their cooldowns suck dick. Now, this is a very interesting change. It's very utility-based, which is going to translate into defensive-based, into a defensive cooldown. Symbol of Hope, currently, has been a very big meme amongst the big cooldowns community because it only gives your healers 12% of their mana, which is, it's okay, but that's not the type of cooldown you want from a healer. Symbol of Hope is being changed to still give you 12% of your mana, so that's still there. The addition is that now your raid members each receive 60-second cooldown recovery of a major defensive ability. So things like Astral Shift, things like Ice Block, things like Cloak of Shadows. Because we don't have the list, it might even be that other abilities like Rallying Cry for Warrior get reduced by 60 seconds. Depending on how many abilities or which of the abilities are getting hit, this could be the defensive ability, the external ability that puts Holy Priest into the meta of raid healers. Especially because if Holy Priest has one thing already, is throughput, is very high HPS. The reason why they're not picked is because their cooldowns suck dick compared to Spirit Link, compared to Aura Mastery, and compared to Barrier, or Spirit Shell, of course. Yes, this doesn't exactly give you what those things give you, which is damage reduction, right? Damage reduction is only given to Shaman, Discipline, and Holy Paladin, basically, but it could be strong enough to make Holy Priest resurface a little bit more in raid encounters. And this is what we have so far. So far, basically, today, the release came out with a bunch of nerfs. TLDR, there is going to be, of course, way more as the days and the weeks go by and we get deeper into 9.1 and more changes come in. I am happy, at the very least, that Blizzard is acknowledging the strength of both Fire and Balance Druid, and even, partially Affliction, so they are addressing the strongest specs. This is always fun, even if just for the speculation, right? For the theory crafting and the guessing game that comes in before a new patch or a new expansion, even about which spec is going to be the stronger or the strongest, which specs are going to be more meta. So at least now you get the strongest ones getting nerfed. So you open up the possibilities a little bit. You have more room, you have more window for feely crafting and for theorizing which specs are going to become strong. We are, of course, still waiting pretty much on almost all of the melee specs, the tanks, and most of the healers. So for now, we stop here. Remember, of course, to subscribe to my OnlyFans, to donate to my charity, blah, 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 all that stuff. See you guys soon. And in the meantime, I wouldn't mind Holy Priest becoming meta, especially if it means Discipline dies.